Welcome to the best business show in the world.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Best Business Show with me, Nigel T. Best. We've got a great episode today. It's all about a business plan. Do you need a business plan? What we find is that sometimes people talk about business plans and they make it out to be the biggest thing. Is it the biggest thing that you need for your business? Well, we're going to discuss that today, and we're going to be talking all sort of things about how technical you can get, how you can go from laissez-faire to OCD, and which is the best route. All right, so let's get into it. If you're watching this on YouTube, hi on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, go over to the YouTube. It's Nigel T. Best is the channel. You'll find me there, and this is just be up there as a video, and there's a couple of visuals. Don't worry, I'm going to talk you through it anyway if you're listening, so it should all still make sense. But let's just jump into this. Let me have a look on here. So, first thing, I love this quote, and it's everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Thank you, Mike Tyson, for that one. But that is so true. You can have all the plans you want, but when you start a business, when you're in business, those plans can go out of the window quicker than something very fast. It's so true. You can come up with an amazing plan. So many boxers, I guess this is where it came from. So many people talked about having a brilliant plan to try and get Mike Tyson, to try and get him there and try and sort him out and win the world title, heavyweight champion of the world and all that. And then he came up against him, and the first thing he did was punch them straight in the face. And at that point, all their plans seem to go out of the window. So yeah, you can have a plan. It can be a brilliant plan. And you can be thinking to yourself, hey, this is the number one plan. I'm going to win the heavyweight title. Bang, first one right on the chops, and you're down and out for the count. The question is not in boxing, it's a great analogy for life and for business. It's not the fact that you get knocked down, it's whether you get back up again. Okay, so if that's the first thing so that we're looking at there, if you've got a plan, just be prepared for that plan to go tits up, okay, and not be worth the paper it's written on. Now, when people talk about that, there's a lot of talk, you'll hear it, especially in corporate life. So if you've been in corporate life, you'll have heard this a lot. And it's all about disaster recovery, business resilience, business fight back, business continuity, all these words, all this management speak. And what it really means is when you are faced with something pretty tough, when things go wrong, what are you going to do about it? So just imagine you've just been punched in the face by Mike Tyson. Ooh, that's a bit of a kind of an ouch moment, isn't it? That is a bit of an ouch moment. You've just been punched in the face by Mike Tyson. What are you going to do next? Well, one of the things that I do is very much one of these things where the local authority, the council, want to come in and they want to talk to you about all your systems, your regulations, your rules, your guidance, your policies, procedures. It's very paper driven. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you're starting a business, when you're in business, you've got to weigh up, and I am probably not the best person to talk about dotting the I's and crossing the T's on all the paperwork, because to me, you're better off getting someone who's very good at that. Because if your idea is the creative or the getting it done or the setting up of the culture, that's what you should focus on. When it came down to disaster recovery, okay, I've been involved in disaster recovery plans before. I was many years ago part of General Motors, and there was an enormous document about disaster recovery. And I remember the tale came back that they'd got this huge plan. They'd got this spare space when everything went down. They'd, load up the vans with equipment, the lorries, the trucks. They'd go over to this new place, they'd put it all in, they'd plug it all in, the system would be up and running, no problem. Their disaster would last a few hours whilst they got it sorted. However, when they tried it and they got the equipment and they took it off the trucks and took it to this new building, it wouldn't fit through the door. at which point the whole plan fell apart. Okay, so they had a 600 odd page document and it fell apart. And from that, I took the lesson of, okay, you've got to be more practical about these things. You've got to have an attitude as well as a plan. And sometimes the attitude can trump a plan every time. Okay. And what we had was, we had a situation where the local authority came in and wanted to talk to me about the policies and procedures and what we did and how we did it, and did we have it all documented and everything like that, because if it's not written down, it doesn't happen. That's what they say. Okay. It came to the disaster recovery. So we've been going through it, and we've been ticking all the boxes. All the information was good. They liked what we had, what we were doing, where we were at with all this thing. So this is good. This is good. And then it came down to disaster recovery. And I said, I know what you're going to ask me. You're going to ask me for a document, aren't you? And they said, yes, absolutely, Nigel. We need a document. We need a document to know that you have a plan. You have a business plan. So when something happens, you can deal with it. Okay, I said. So typically in the UK, that might be snow related or flood related or loss of power, or something happens to the office and you can't do what you'd normally do. They said, yes, that's exactly it. I said, oh, okay, let me, and I cringe, but I kind of, it might give you an insight into how my mind works. But I said, oh, just give me a minute, I'll go get the plan. And I disappeared off, and I picked up a pad of Post-its, and I got a pen and I wrote on it, and I wrote the words, "We just do it." And I took it in and I gave it to her. Yeah, you can imagine she thought, you cocky, arrogant twit. That doesn't work. A piece of paper like that is not a plan. A Post-it, a little yellow Post-it with you writing the words on, "We just do it," is almost like you're taking the piss. And she wasn't happy, and I did kind of do it tongue in cheek. But when she started getting a bit sort of stroppy about it, I said, oh, hang on a minute, hang on. I said, right, does the council, does the local authority, do you have a business plan, a business continuity, disaster recovery, business resilience plan? Oh, yes, she said. Oh, yes, we have one. I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, how big is this document? Oh, it's hundreds of pages. Oh, that's good, isn't it? So it covers everything, does it? Oh, yes, covers everything. And everyone has a copy of this document. Oh, yes. So when something happens, you all know what to do. Yes, absolutely. I said, oh, that's good. And I said, what about the other businesses in the area? Do they have one as well? Yes, I've seen theirs. They've got big documents as well. Big documents that cover all sorts of things. I said, oh, that's good, isn't it? So when a disaster happens, or when something happens, they can survive and they can do it. Oh, yes. And nobody's left without care. No, that's true. That's true. Nobody's left. It's all good. They've got a plan, you see, Nigel. They've got a plan. They've got a big document. They've got a big plan. I said, oh, right, that's good. I said, well, let's just rewind just a few short months to when we had snow and the roads were blocked and you couldn't get around. I said, how did those plans work then? She said, well, how do you mean? I said, well, it's funny, isn't it? Because every other company phoned us for help. Well, yes, because they couldn't cope. Yeah, well, yes. And the funny thing is, I said, the local authority phoned us for help as well, didn't they? Because you couldn't do everything that you said you could, and you needed help from someone else who could just do it. Well, yes, that's true. So in those circumstances, how useful was that enormous document that you'd all spent months, weeks, days, hours, whatever, working on? This document that everyone had a copy of. This document that told you exactly what you should do in circumstances just like this. How did that work out for you? Well, yes. Well, I can see what you mean. And I said, well, no, can you? Because to us, a disaster recovery plan is an attitude, and our attitude is we will just do it. And we had people who caught a ride with a friend who had a tractor and went across fields, and we had people that walked, and we had people that went out and spent time in certain areas and stayed with friends so that they didn't need cars and they could still get around. And I said, and when we had this issue and people were in this, we need to have a disaster recovery, we need to have a business continuity plan. I said, I'll post it with the attitude of we just do it. Beat your enormous document, hands down, didn't it? Well, yes, I suppose it did, she said. But Nigel, you know it and I know it that I need to tick a box, and unless this box gets ticked, you're going to fail this report. I said, okay, I'll dig one out and I'll put our name on it. Does it have to be a good one or a bad one? No, just so long as you've got one, a document that people would recognize as a business disaster recovery document. I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll put the plan together. I'll have it. I said, but as far as we're concerned, attitude will always trump the disaster recovery plan. And there we are. That's what kind of happened. Sometimes it's a tick box exercise. So if you're going to the bank and you're wanting money, people will sort of say, right, I need to see all these documents. I need to see this. I need to see that, because that gives us comfort that you are doing the right things. In reality, those documents can be absolutely worthless. In fact, sometimes worse than useless and worthless, because people don't keep them up to date. They refer to things that have been changed. So I've seen business continuity plans where they refer to phone numbers with services and where they can get external help, and those services have now been changed and they use a different company and those phone numbers don't work. So disaster recovery plans, yes, I understand the principle, but I also understand they are very difficult things to work on. And when you're starting a business, forget it. Just have the attitude that I will do, if it comes down to it, I'll do everything myself, because the attitude is we just do it. Okay, and that's what we've got to do. You've got to think to yourself, okay, when you're starting a business, do I need these enormous documents, or would a post-it with a few words on it, we just do it, be good enough? It's a fair point, and one that I think people sort of sometimes forget. So there we go. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and then I'd say, is it the attitude that makes you survive on that one? So let's just get rid of me from there. So the other thing is no plan to OCD. So here's a thing. Which is better? Let's work at it. Mine was a take the piss plan because it was written on a post-it. We just do it. Other people will go to the extremes of 2, 3, 4, 500, 1,000 pages as to absolutely step-by-step detail what you will do in terms of a plan. I think there's a happy ground in between, and I would say do not get hung up on a plan too much in the early days. There is probably no right answer as to whether you should have a plan or not. And when people say, well, which is it? Do you go all in? Do you go all in on a plan, or do you just do something which is relatively basic? I'd say start on the basics, tick those, because you will come up against someone who has a box that needs ticking, and that box says, do they have a business plan? Okay, it's in there. If you are not going for borrowing, if you don't need money to set up, if you are starting out on your own, your plan should be more about how to get sales, because a business is only a business if you sell something. Products, services, whatever it is. It's only when you sell something that you have a business. Okay. So in the first instance, you writing all sorts of things about what you might not do, how you might cope with this, that, you're focusing on the wrong thing. And if you are someone who cannot get beyond or starting a business, who cannot get out there and talking to people and selling a product before you have an enormous plan, you are going to be wasting time. Do you remember back at school when some kids just got on and did some revision, whereas other kids spent days and weeks coming up with a color-coded kind of revision plan? It was beautifully laid out. It was all neatly done. It had the dates and it had colors and they corresponded to a subject, and it was how long they were going to spend doing this and how long they were going to spend doing that and all the rest of it. And by the time they'd created this enormous thing, you were 2 weeks closer to the exam and you'd already missed half of your structured training thing that you thought was so important. Whereas the person who just got on with it and just started studying was probably getting ahead of you. So think to yourself, okay, how big a plan do I need? And how much time should I spend on it? What is it a key focus? Is it a key priority at this point to have that? Okay, so no right or wrong answer. Determining who, so on here, what I'm looking at here is, when you're thinking about how much time you should spend doing this plan, how big a plan is it? You've got to think to yourself, who wants to see it? Okay, who actually needs this plan? So when you're looking at it and you're thinking to yourself, okay, who needs to see this plan? I am kind of thinking, right, let's work through the potential people that will see it. So the first one is a bank or someone lending you money. Now, think of it from the point of view of the bank. What's the bank wanting? Or what's the investor wanting? They're wanting their money back. Exactly. They want their money back with interest or whatever it is that you've agreed at the outset of this. They want to know they're going to get their money back. So when they lend you some money, they're going to be saying, okay, talk us through the plan that you've got to get this money back. And that is the plan that you're going to have to draft. You're going to have to come up with. So if it's a bank, they may have a very, very formal way of laying things out. But here's the best thing. They may also have a pro forma plan or give you some guidance about how the plan should be set up. So your business plan should include this, 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 and this, and you can work your way through it. If, however, you are borrowing money from, say, an investor, the investor may have a different approach to it. And they may want to talk to you and gauge how passionate you are about it, how knowledgeable you are about it, what your experience is. On another podcast I do with a good friend, Ray McLennan, the How to Raise Money podcast, we talk about the CREST model. So CREST. And this is an element of credibility of the C model. So when you're talking to the investor's thinking, how credible are these sort of people that we're going to be lending money to? They want to know, have a look at that. What are the returns they're going to get? What are the exits in the business? So how are you going to repay them? How are they going to get out of it? Or are you going to build this business up and sell it ultimately? What's the security, and do they trust you? So we go into great depth on that, the How to Raise Money podcast. But in terms of this and building a business plan, you've got to think along the same lines. If you don't know the person who's lending you money, you're going to have to help them understand more about you and gain some credibility. Are you credible? Have you gone through all these sort of exits, the security, the returns on there, and do they feel they can trust you? A bank is going to look at you and say, yeah, all good and well, but essentially we don't trust you, and we just want to make sure that we're going to get our money back. So they will look at umpteen different ways of getting the money back, and proof and all the rest of it. And a business plan is probably going to be fundamental to that, because that will, in theory, give them an understanding as to how this business is going to work and how it's going to generate the money to pay you back. If it's just you and you're coming up with your own business plan, there is much more about how you are going to make this work. And it might be that you just say, right, okay, on a Monday I pick the phones up, on a Tuesday I write emails, on a Wednesday I go out and see people, on a Thursday I do my numbers and my accounts, and on my Friday I have fun with people, whatever that might be. I go networking or something. It might be something as simple as that. If it's if you're having staff, if you're going to be recruiting staff, then the business plan is, I think of it more a business plan where you are talking to people about the culture of the business and where you're going to go with this business. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that if you've got staff, they want to understand who it is that they're working for, who it is that they are following, far more than if you gave them a very dry 100-page document and said, read this. No, they're going to buy in. When it's a small business, they're going to buy into the person's personality, and they're going to be fired up. You know, if you are on fire about your business and, oh my goodness, I can't wait to get out there and we're going to do this and we're going to do that and let's get out there and all these sort of things, people are going to buy into that. That's what they're going to look at far more than the business plan. Okay, so these are just some of the things that you've got to think about whether a business plan is important. Apart from that, let's just go back and have a look at what else I've got down here that I want to talk about. Okay. Now, a business plan is often going to include three things, and we're going to get into a bit more of the accounting side of things, and I'm going to touch on them very briefly. Okay, very briefly. And typically, accounts are made up of three things: balance sheet, a profit and loss, and a cash flow. Okay, so balance sheet. What, you know, I can feel people turning off. I can feel them turning the podcast off. Bye. I'll wave and say bye. I'm going to keep this really short and sweet. A balance sheet. This is what you own against what you owe. And the way that it's done is technical, but it always has to net down to the same amounts, and those two figures on the what you own and what you owe, they have to balance. Don't worry too much about it. All you want to know is within the balance sheet there are things called assets and there are things called liabilities. If you've never read it, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, because his definition of assets and liabilities is a damn sight better than the technical accounting definition, which is, I'm not even going to say it because it's too boring. Just think of assets, things that are going to put money in your pocket, and liabilities, things that where money has to come out of your pocket and you've got to pay someone. Okay. Now, a balance sheet is very different. It's a very much a one moment in time snapshot of what your business is like. Okay. Does it tell you much about the business? Well, yeah, if you're a good accountant, you can go and you can find out lots of things. Does it tell you everything? Absolutely not. And it's very much like all accounts are very much like your business continuity plan, as opposed to my post-it with "we just do it." It can tell you all sorts of things, the accounts. Does it tell you what's going to happen tomorrow in your business? No. And for me personally, banks and other lending institutions and all those other sort of things, they focus on history far too much. They focus on the history of a business. And this is where businesses find it very difficult in the early days to raise money. Why? Because they have no history. What do banks like to do? They like to look at history. Why? Because they think that'll indicate the future. Okay. The likes of Blockbuster, Kodak, and various other firms who had good histories. So there's a lot of businesses, a lot of high street stores in the UK that have got a great history, but did that indicate how the future was going to go for them? No. Kodak, been in film and all the rest of it for 100 years, invented digital photography. So banks were happy to lend to them. Yeah, look at their history, look at their history. What banks don't do is they don't look at they get a business plan. Yeah, the business plan. We're going to carry on with film and we're going to make, camera films, and we're going to be good for another 100 years. And banks go, oh, okay. In reality, what happened? Digital photography overtook them. Kodak filed for bankruptcy, and there you go. Accounts, do not get too hung up on them. Give it to an accountant. Although I'm a qualified accountant, I hate accounts, because to me, it's hard work. It's always historic. It's always historic. Why? Because you're looking at a snapshot of what happened in the past. Of more interest is a second area of accounts. It's probably the profit and loss. Now, what's profit and loss? Okay, I'll just very quickly go back to here, and what I said on here is what you took in sales less what it cost to sell it. That's a very basic way of looking at things, okay? That's a very basic way of looking at things, but it's pretty much it. It's saying, what did you sell? How much did it cost to sell? And have you made any money as a result of that? So if you sell £1,000 worth of goods, but it cost you £1,200 to sell it, so in other words, to make it, to buy it in, to have a sales team, some payroll costs or admin expenses or whatever, and it costs you 1,200 quid, then you lose £200. So you've made a loss in the year of £200. That's not a good business. If, however, you took £1,000 in sales and it only cost you 50 quid to, create it, sell it, and you've made £950, wow, that seems like a really good business. Okay. Now, which of those businesses is the stronger? Well, you can't necessarily tell in isolation. And this is where accounts are always something in the round, and you need to get more than one opinion on it. When it comes down to cash flow, it's, okay, you have sold £1,000 worth of goods, and it only costs you 50 quid to do it. But here's the thing, nobody's paid you yet. Nobody's paid you yet, so you haven't actually received any of that money. Then you could be in trouble, couldn't you? If, however, on the cash flow, it costs you you made £1,000 in sales, and it's cost you £1,200 to do that, but you've received £1,000 in, and you don't have to pay all £1,200 out for another 2 years, your cash flow is probably in a better state than the other example. Where am I going with this? Accounts can bamboozle you, confuse you, drive you up the wall, and give you misleading information. It's always a case of when people used to say to you, when you're out there on a job and say, what do the accounts look like? You could almost reply and say, what do you want them to look like? All right, it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing to say about accounts, but hey, have a look at some of the scandals. Have a look at what's out there at the moment in the press about big accountancy firms and how they audit. Are they giving a true and fair view? Are the accounts what people expect them to be? I think people expect accounts to be a whole load of things that they are not. And I always used to spend my time talking to the directors. I wanted to understand the business. I wanted to understand what they thought the business was. I wanted them to tell me more about how the business was going and where it was going and what was going to happen to the business. That's what I wanted to understand. Then the numbers either backed it up or completely disagreed with it, and that's when you'd investigate further. So you need to think to yourself, okay, business plan is going to involve some sort of plans around your numbers, your finances, your balance sheet, your P&L, and your cash flow. If you don't understand it, go get help. I'll leave it at that. All right. What else do we need to talk about on this? I would say that in terms of a business plan, that pretty much at this point covers it. Think to yourself, who needs it? Who needs this business plan? If it's just you, forget all the technical stuff. You need to concentrate more on creating a product or service and getting out there and selling it. That's what you should be focusing on. And you should outsource every bit of accounting and other things to other people. There's plenty of time to get your head around finances, how they work and what they should do, and what they tell you and what they don't tell you. Okay. Think to yourself, who needs it? Am I borrowing money? Am I not borrowing money? Do I need to borrow money? Because if I do, I may have to get wrapped up in all this paperwork when I just want the post-it that says just do it. If you can get away with the post-it that says just do it, a lot of people would disagree with me, but Sodom, I don't care. This is how I'd say get out there and start hustling, start doing your business, start doing it on the side, see if you can get a sale. If you can get a sale and you can get that sale for a profit and you get paid for that and money is coming in, you've then got the opportunity to buy in the expertise about business plans and other things and accounts and putting a finance together and all the rest of it. And whilst they are doing that for you, you can ask them questions. Can you just explain this to me? What does this tell me? What should it tell me? And that's how you learn your knowledge about business. But OCD, perfection, ducks in a row, all the gates to align, all this nonsense. No, forget it. Don't do that. Your business plan should be, I've got a damn good product or service. I'm going to go out there and sell it, and I'm going to get paid for it. That's what you should be thinking. You should be thinking, people have a problem, I have a solution, and I can give them that solution, and they will pay me for it. That is your business plan at this point. Sod all the rest of it. Accounts, business plans, disaster recoveries, policies and procedures, they're all important, but not at this point. If you get all those things in place, document after document, file upon file, you have rooms full of documents and all the rest of it, but you never make a sale, what's the point of it? Concentrate, folks. Here at the Best Business Show, we want you to concentrate on what is important to you. Okay, and what is important to you is getting out there and selling. And on that, awesome note, thank you very much for listening. My name's Nigel T. Best. I'll see you again on the Best Business Show. Thanks very much for watching. If you're on YouTube, leave any comments below. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Send me a message, give me a rating, get in touch. If you want to get in touch, DM me on Instagram at Nigel T. Best. And I will see you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.